Hey, everybody. How is everyone doing here today? It looks like we're missing Mr. Novello. If anybody knows where he's at, tell him that we've got a YouTube video to do. So today we're going to be talking about divorce listings. We're going to be talking about how to take divorce listings, and we're going to be explaining to you the divorce process. If you have any questions about divorce listings and the divorce process, make sure to comment down below. I think we just have a superstar that just joined us.
You feel the energy in the room shift. That's what happened.
We're going to be talking about divorce listings, man.
Yeah, I love it.
Divorce listings.
The reason why I think this is such a good topic, Jose, is that people are always asking the both of us, really, like, what's the best lead sources? Is there like this magical box of leads that I can go to so I can do more deals? And we talk about frequently and often that truth is on a spectrum. So two things can be true at the same time, right? I think it's very interesting to me that, posts that I do that get like a tremendous amount of views, Jose, they're usually like when I say open houses are a waste of time. Like people, oh my God, like 150 posts, like, how dare you? I did 3 deals from open houses last year. I took one list and I'm like, look, truth is on a spectrum. Can you do a few transactions sitting in open houses? Yes. If you spent all of that time sitting in open houses, stacking your time on top of of what to say and how to say it with sellers, and then looked for sources that have the highest degree of probability of a seller wanting to do something, would you do more deals over time? The answer is yes. So two things can be true at the same time. What we're talking about here, guys, is efficiency. If you are going to spend the time to sit in a room in some air conditioning and go blah, blah, blah. Hi, my name is Aaron and I'm a local real estate agent. I was calling with regards, if you're going to spend the time doing that, I might as well spend the time in areas that have higher degrees of probability that transactions are taking place there. Okay. So one of them we've talked about a lot is probate. A second one, which is a life event, is divorce. So let's look at some of those statistics. 56% of all marriages end in divorce, which is interesting.
Ouch.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? Because if Jose, you had a 56% chance when you jumped out of an airplane of living, you probably wouldn't do it.
Would not.
Yeah.
100%.
But we get married. And the reason why we do is because if you get it right, it's amazing. I've been married for almost 20 years. You've been married for a while. So what's also true, though, is the numbers are the numbers. So 56% end in divorce. A good portion are going to have properties. Now, the property, one of two things happen. Someone buys the other person out, or it's sold. That's it. Now, with that being the case, if it is going to be sold, is the motivation very high? Yes. And the question is if there's equity or not, and we can get into that in a prequel, right? So that whole exercise, walking you down this thought track, is if I'm going to spend time prospecting, I might as well spend time in pools of leads that have a high degree of probability that somebody's going to want to sell their property. And divorce is one of them. Would you agree with that, Jose?
I agree with you 100%. So I actually took a course on divorce. It was taught by 2 attorneys. It was taught by a judge, and it was taught by a real estate agent that does anywhere about 50 deals a year. Name of the course is called Divorce Real Estate Expert by this gal named Laurel Starks. I'm actually good friends with her as well, too. But what I realize is that divorce are some of the more complex listings out in the marketplace, meaning there's so many different variables and so many different situations. So it's funny, but because I was able to take the course, I know how to approach divorces. I know how to approach the attorneys. I know how to deal with some of these situations. So the first thing that you want to do is I had somebody call me, they're like, Jose, I want you to come over to my property right now. I'm getting divorced and I want to sell my property. Most agents, when they receive a phone call like that, they're like, okay, great. Let me go over to the property right now. Let me list your home. What I started to do is I started to qualify the lead. to see where they're at in the divorce process. I said, okay, how far along are you in the divorce process? He just said, I just filed for paperwork last Monday. I'm like, okay, that could be a red flag because in California, there is a cooling off period. So like you can't get divorced in California for 6 months. You file for a divorce in
I didn't even know
California.
that, bro. You file for a divorce, you got to wait 6 months to see if it's like you really want to do it.
Yeah, because so many people change their mind in California. So like basically you file for divorce, dude, you're not getting divorced for 6 months minimum from the time that you file for divorce.
When they call you and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about getting divorced, you're like, okay, well, I appreciate the opportunity to perhaps be of assistance. I got a couple quick questions to ask just to make sure I could, provide you with the most accurate information, be the best assistance to you. Just so I'm clear, have you guys actually filed for divorce yet? Yeah. How long ago?
Yep.
That's fantastic. Now I'm not going to run out there. At. Yeah, where they're
I'm like, where that in the process. So a lot of times a consumer will call you or reach out to you and they don't understand the divorce process. They don't understand like what it's like. Because I took a course, I'm like, okay, I understand the divorce process. I've sat in courtrooms watching people getting divorced. So I understand that there's other variables like child custody. There is, what's that thing called where child support, there is sabotage, there's restraining orders, there is physical abuse that happens in some of these cases. There's so many different variables. Okay, so that was the first question that I asked her. I said, how far along are you in the process? She goes, okay, we just filed last week. Not a problem. Somebody could still sell the property even though they just filed. The next question that I asked is, I said, is your significant other or is your ex on the same page about you wanting to sell the property?
And I want everybody to notice what's happening here. So the first question, timing. Where are we in the process? And this is what's happening in his brain. He's like, okay, where are they? Next question is I've only spoken to you. I can hear from you. Just so you know, my intention in asking is not to be nosy, just to make sure that I can provide you with the most accurate information. I've only spoken to you. You seem to be clear on your goal and objective in getting it sold. Is the other party involved on the same page? Shut up. Because if they're like, well, he's trying to stay there and blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's a problem.
It's a completely different situation right there. If you hear from them, no, the other person wants to stay and we just filed, more than likely, here's what's going to happen. The other person is not going to want to sell. And the person that wants to sell may even tell you, well, why don't you reach out to them and see if you can convince them to sell. Worst idea ever.
Yeah, don't do that.
You're going to reach out to them and they're going to be so upset and they're going to be like, no. And there's nothing that you can say or do to be logical to the other person because the other person recommended you to them, they're not going to trust you. They're going to be like, oh, he's working for them. The other person's trying to pull a fast one on me. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, look, as soon as you told me the other person didn't want to sell, I tell her, look, I'm going to be very transparent with you. If the other person does not want to sell, more than likely the other person is going to fight you until some sort of judge or mediation happens where both you come to some sort of agreement and both of you decide that you want to sell. And if you guys can't reach an agreement through mediation, more than likely at some point the judge is going to order for the property to be sold, but that's a completely different process. It does not make sense for us to meet at this point because the other person does not want to sell. Keep me in mind if something changes.
Yeah, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is just send you my contact information. I'll shoot you a quick email. So that way you'll have it on file. So as things progress and whether you guys come to a meeting of the minds in terms of selling the real property, or if you don't, you could give me a call and I could see if I could be of assistance and help you at that point. Does that make sense to you? They're like, sure. But notice, guys, 2 or 3 questions can end up saving you like hundreds, if not thousands of hours of time.
Not only that, but the person was like, well, can you just come over and tell me what my house is worth? Now, keep in mind, if the other person does not want to sell and this person wants to sell and the person who wants to sell is asking you for a valuation, just keep in mind that the moment you give her a valuation or the moment you meet with her, you're almost instantly disqualified from working with them in the future.
I know, but tell people why. I know why, but tell them why.
Well, a lot of times is whenever 2 people are fighting and they end up selecting a realtor. They want a neutral third-party realtor that doesn't have any relationship with either one of the parties. So the moment you go over there and meet with that person, you're almost automatically disqualified, because now if you're in contact with the attorneys or something, now if it goes to that process, you can say, hey, look, I'm a neutral third party. I have no relationship to neither one of the parties. I've never met neither one of the parties. I am a neutral. I am specially trained for these types of situations. I can help you guys achieve the best possible outcome and communicate neutrally and unbiasedly and help you guys achieve the outcome that you guys want.
Yeah. So from a psychological perspective, what Jose's saying is that if you go and give them an estimate of value, the other party's mind, when they're not in agreement, they're like, oh, Jose's on her team.
On her team instead of the neutral.
That's exactly right.
And you're almost instantly disqualified by the other party, because in a divorce, there's so many trust issues. People think that one party is trying to pull a fast one on the other party.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. So it's a combination of the kind of tactical, specialized knowledge of procedurally how a divorce works. Let's say in your state where they have the 6-month cooling period, from when they initially file, the rules of the game. So we've talked about this multiple times in multiple different avenues, which is that in order to play a game, I have to know the language of the game and the rules of the game. So in other words, like if we're playing American football and I don't know what offsides is, I can't play. If I don't know what an interception is, I can't play. If I don't know what face mask is, I can't play, right? So I have to understand the language of the game and I have to understand the rules of the game. So if I say to Jose, I'm like, okay, she's like, yeah, we filed a little bit ago. Okay, great. And is there a divorce decree? I need to know what that actually means, because a divorce decree is where there's a decree that states what's going to happen. Here's how assets divided, the property will be sold. Let's say they're like, yeah, there is a divorce decree. Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, what does it say about the real property? Shh. Well, it says it's going to be sold. Okay. And does it state in the divorce decree who the agent's going to be? No, it doesn't. So being that you guys are, going through this process, we have the good fortune of helping a lot of families through this process. How do you think collectively you guys are going to go about hiring an agent? Shh. Like, oh, well, he's just going to leave it to me. I wouldn't believe that. I'd be like, nope. Okay, well, I respect that. At the same time, we help a lot of families, as I mentioned, and I find that what causes the least amount of friction is just like 1,000% transparency with all parties. So if we were to connect, my suggestion would be is that we all connect and review the documentation together and review the information together, whether that's Zoom, if you guys don't feel comfortable being in each other's presence, or if it's in person, just so I know, is it amicable? Are you guys like on speaking terms? Oh, shh. You see what I mean? Like, you have to be really, first I have to understand procedurally what's happening, and that's going to dictate the questions that I ask to make sure that I'm being efficient with my time.
Yeah. And also, like what you talked about, the divorce decree, or in California, it's like a divorce order or a stipulation. What does it say? Like I ran into one recently where he's like, hey, I want to sell my property. I want you to help me. I'm like, where are you guys at in the process? He's like, well, the judge already told us that we need to sell. I'm like, do you have a court order? He's like, yes. I'm like, what does a court order say? And he starts reading it to me over the phone. And the court order clearly states, it was funny because I was just listening to it. He's like, look, I am to provide her with a list of 3 agents, and she is going to select a realtor from those 3 agents. I'm like, have you provided her with a list of 3 agents? He's like, no, I have not. I'm like, has your attorney provided her with a list of 3 agents? He's like, I'm not sure. So what I said is, let me reach out to your attorney. The attorney had already provided the other side a list of 3 agents that she was comfortable with.
And you weren't on the list.
I wasn't on the list. But what I said to the attorney, I'm like, look, he wants me to be on the list of the 3 agents. Is it too late for me to be on the list? She's like, no, it's not. Let me send your name on top of the as a 4th agent on the list. Then what did I do? I went out to the other attorney and I said, hey, just so you know, you're going to be receiving my name from such and such attorney. Here is my CV, a curriculum vitae, or do you know what that is? A curriculum vitae? It's like a resume, but it's used by attorneys basically. So I sent her that along with like a resume for the property. That way they can present that. Now it's going to be up to the other party to select from a list of 4 agents. Now that package that I'm submitting to them, it's like a package that I've used in other types of situations. If you're part of Morales Group University, it's available for a download right there.
If you partner with us, it's available for download. There you go.
It's available for a download as well too. But it's a package that I've used to win other situations where I'm one of the 4 agents, or in some cases, the judge will make the decision and you have to provide the list of 3 to 4 agents to the judge and the judge will select. And I've even won cases where the judge gets to select because I prepare it in a way where it makes me the expert, basically.
Yeah, and it looks very professional. And the point being is like, if you didn't understand the way the process worked procedurally, you wouldn't know what questions to ask to be able to even get on the list. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't even know.
Not only that, but like I was just appointed on one recently, and the very first thing they're like, "Oh, like you've been selected to be the real estate agent." I'm like, "Can I get a copy of the order, or can I get a copy of the divorce decree?" Because the divorce decree or the order is going to tell you exactly what the judge wants and how things are handled. So sometimes with these types of situations, they'll fight you on the price. In that court order, the judge said you select the price as the agent, and if anybody fights you on the price, you can bring it back to court, but there could potentially be, or I'll review what your CMA is, and if I agree with you, they may get sanctioned basically for just not agreeing,
for wasting the court's time.
Or that single party may get sanctioned as well too. So it basically allows you to know how much leverage you have in the situation and what are the rules that you have to abide by, basically.
Yeah, and I imagine, like, let's say you're having a conversation with the other side's attorney and they're like, well, we don't agree on the price. Like, well, I appreciate that. You're certainly entitled to your opinion. Just so you know, I'm sure you're aware that in the divorce decree, it states that the agent, which would be me, and I'm the one who should select the price. If you wish to, I know that it's within your rights to bring it in front of the judge. I'm going to show them the same information that we just reviewed together as a team. And if he sides with the logic that we're providing and the evidence that we're providing as to why the price should be there, then your client will be sanctioned. Is that something that you wish to do?
Potentially sanctioned.
Yeah, potentially sanctioned. So like, I don't know if you want to do that. If you want to, it's okay. But like, just let me know. Now you can have that conversation. If you didn't understand that, you wouldn't be able to have that rebuttal, right?
Yeah. So basically,
for those asking, like I see here, he's like, how should I start seeking a niche? Well, one, understand that you need one. That's the first step. I need everybody on this call to understand like what learning actually is. Okay. We think that learning is just the acquisition of like knowledge. Knowledge is truth. Well, in order for like wisdom is the application of truth. It's actually like doing it, right? So in order for you to learn, like for there to be wisdom, first, there has to be ignorance. I have to like not know the truth. 2 is I need knowledge. That's truth. And then 3, I need understanding. That's assimilation of the truth. The purpose is I learn about the thing so that I can learn to do the thing, and then I can do the thing. So if I sit on a call like this and you gather this information and you don't do the thing, you haven't actually learned it. Use that as your framework. Okay, that's what actually learning is, right? So the first step is you have to decide that you need a niche. And I think everybody needs one because the riches are in the niches. Mine was probate. I live in heaven's waiting room. Jose does some probate. He also does divorces. These are just pools of leads where there's life events, death, divorce, job relocation, moving to, it's independent of market conditions, independent of interest rates, independent of economics. You know what I'm saying? Like people have to buy and sell. Fine. So that just makes logical sense for me to hang out there. Number 2, once I make that decision, you have to make the decision to acquire knowledge, which is truth. How does this work? If you choose probate, I have a course. I'll teach you how it works. If you choose divorce, Jose mentioned that thing. He'll probably do it on his own in the future when he has some more time. But you have to get access to the truth. How does this work? I have to understand the language. I have to understand procedurally, how does this process work? But remember, the goal is to learn about the thing so that way I can learn to do the thing, and then I actually do the thing.
Yeah.
That's what learning is. But that's procedurally. Now, once you learn procedurally how it works and process-wise, then what you could do, which I'm sure people are going to ask us, is, well, where do I get this information? Well, I'm aware that for divorces, it's public information. There's third-party vendors that can give you access to it. And then you have to learn the specialized knowledge of what to say on that call, because it's a nuanced, right? Like the process underneath of discovery, asking questions, like what's the situation, that stays the same. But there's a little bit of a nuance there because it's a divorce. So I have to be very high on emotional intelligence. I have to be very high on the fact that there's two people fighting. I have to be very high on the fact that people don't trust each other. Right.
And just so you know, like, let's say that you get a list and let's say you skip trace it and you call them. In probate, you can be very direct and say, hey, I'm calling about the estate of John Doe. In divorces, you can't. Meaning that, like, I would not recommend.
No, it's like, hey, Jose, saying, I'm calling you. I heard
you're getting divorced. Worst idea ever. I'm just going to save you guys the time. Do not do that. If you call, I would call them almost like it just happens to be randomly. So what I would do, and I used to do it, we don't do it anymore because obviously we're doing different lead sources at the moment. But what I would do is I would run a hot market script. I would say, hey, I'm looking for Jose. Jose, calling about your property on 123 Banana Street. Reason for my phone calls, there's a shortage of inventory right now in the real estate market, and was just wondering if you would ever consider selling. No, I would not. Not a problem. Is it something you would ever consider in the future? Is a plan to keep it forever? Yes, I am. I'm actually going through a divorce right now.
Bang.
I'm sorry to hear that. If you call them and you tell them, hey, I notice you're getting divorced, be prepared to get yelled at, be prepared to get negative reviews on your business page. Like, how could you? How they're looking for somebody to fight with.
Well, they're looking for somebody to let out all of this pain.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you're 100% right. So the idea is you can get access to the data, and then when you do that, like Jose's saying, like, hey, I was reaching out to you. I'm a local real estate agent. We have the good fortune of helping a lot of families in your geographic area, and there's a shortage of inventory. We can help people get top dollar. I just want to reach out to you to see, when do you have plans on moving? Be quiet. They're like, never. It's like, okay, or I'm not. Okay. So then, just so I'm clear, is your intention to stay here forever? Or do you think at some point in the future that's something you might consider? Well, truthfully, it's funny that you're calling me. I'm actually in the process of getting divorced. Like, wow, well, first of all, thank you for your willingness to share. Second of all, sorry to hear that. And, we do help a lot of families in that particular dynamic. What I'd like to do is just ask you a couple questions just to see if I could give you any more information that could be helpful or useful, because I know it's a very stressful and difficult process. So my first question is have you guys actually filed yet? How long ago did you file? If it was up to you, I know that there's another party involved, but if it was just you, which would your preference be, to keep the property or to sell it? How does the other party feel about selling the property? Are you guys on the same page, or is there any disagreement? Right? So look at what I'm doing. Now that we've gotten clear, okay, something's going on here. Now we're going down this track of pre-qualifying, another form of specialized knowledge, asking questions about time, motivation, decision makers. And that's going to dictate next moves.
100%. Now, what you're looking for, just so you know, when you're calling these divorces, you're looking for the situations where both parties want to sell.
Yes.
And the reason you're looking for those situations is that the other situations are out of your control. There's so many other variables that happen. The judge could select the agent, the other party could select the agent, the party living at the property, or the other party. There could be a buyout. They could keep the property. There's too many other variables that there's ways to target those, but the way to target those are through the attorneys.
Yes, and through the court system.
Through the court system, yeah.
So in other words, like,
versus the individual parties.
Correct. So, and the same, like when people were fighting and there's litigation, I'm not interested, because it's going to take way too long. It's going to get dragged out, and there's more people that need to do something right now where everybody's in agreement, right? So that's where people get tripped up. What Jose's telling you is 100% accurate here, where if they're like, well, we're not talking to each other, and like, it's this drop down fight, I'm personally not going to be interested in that. I want to be on the page where they're like, yo, we both want to sell. Now, for the people that are fighting, if you go through the court system, I had a one-on-one coaching client. He developed a relationship with a judge. Now, here's the dope part about that. So what Jose, he alluded to, let's say two parties are fighting, they can't come to an agreement. Well, it goes in front of the judge and part of the divorce court, and the judge tells them, okay, we're selling.
You're using this agent.
And you're using this agent. Bro, not only do they tell them you're selling it, but you're using this agent. And to what Jose was saying in the divorce decree, if you guys fight about the price reduction, you're going to come in here and I'm going to tell you that you're going to have to do it. So it's pretty solid. Like if I've had that happen maybe once or twice in my career where I was in, there's no, you're the agent. That's it. There's no interviewing, no nothing. So if you're going to make this like a complete niche, one niche would be just to go directly to them.
To the
and if they, to the parties that are actually going through the divorce, and through questions, if you find out both of them are on the same page, great, you help them. Or like Jose said, they're in the process of decision making and you can get on the list, whatever, great, you help them. For the ones that are drop down fighting, you can either make two decisions. One, don't deal with them. There's more than enough with the people who are that are in agreement. Number two, if you want to round out this niche, you start making relationships with the courts, with the attorneys. Now, that process is a long game. That is a relationship game. You have to hug babies. You got to buy some lunches. You got to take people out to breakfast. You know what I'm saying? Like the way he did it is in his area, which was in the Northeast in New Jersey.
Shout out to New Jersey.
Yeah, shout outs to New Jersey. We got a bunch of builders in New Jersey. Attorneys, divorce judges and attorneys, they have like associations. So what he did is he sponsored the association for divorce attorneys for like 2 years. So he's buying the lunches for their meetings, but he's in the room with all of the divorce attorneys. So he gets to meet all of them. One of those divorce attorneys invited him to an event that the judge was there, and he sat next to the judge and they met each other. So that's like old school, beat the bushes, like networking, like nose to nose, beak to beak, belly to belly. And it takes a while. I know you did something similar. You ended up forming a relationship with a lady who was the president of that, the probate attorneys or whatever, divorce attorneys thing.
And I helped her buy and sell her personal residence as well.
Right. And then over time, you become the guy, right? So then the idea was, hey, you hear what Joshua says? He's like, yo, thanks, guys. It's super helpful. Of course it is, bro. That's what we do here. You're never going to hop on one of these streams. It's not going to be helpful. Promise. So, again, to be complete, you could do that also on probate because that's also a court thing. When people are fighting and the judge says, hey, you're going to sell and here's what you're going to use. So if you want to I personally didn't do that because I was just like impatient. I just want like, let's get it done. So I just focused on probates that they were going to sell. Like everybody's in agreement, or maybe there's a little disagreement, but one of them wants to buy, but they don't have the money. You know what I mean? And that's questions you could just ask like, okay, this is going to be sold, right? And if there was a lot of fighting, I'm not interested. Or if there's litigation, not interested. I would give them guidance, but I'd be like, hey, I appreciate your time. Like as things progress, it sounds like you guys are going to have to do a partition, or we would have people where like they can't track down one of the siblings. I'm like, all right, well, here's how that works. You got to hire, just, court procedurally, you got to go in front of the court. You have to hire a personal investigator. You have to show proof that you tried to find the person. Then we need to do a partition, which is where they separate. We sell the property, separate the funds, and then they use the rest of the funds to go find the person. But that's a long process.
Not only that, but at the end of the partition, and this is why we're saying you got to build it two ways with the attorneys and the judges, and you can do cold outreach. I've had situations where an agent is friends with one of the parties. They're following up with him for 2 years. And then I get appointed as the real estate agent by the judge or by the attorneys. And that agent's like, dude, I literally just invested 2 years of my life. And this Jose Luis guy got appointed. Like, how is that? How is that fair? But it's strategy. You got to understand the rules of the game, and you got to be like, okay, I understand that some of the parties is going to be direct, looking for situations where they're ready and both ready to do it. If not, I'm going to go the other route in terms of building a sphere of influence, building your sphere of influence that is surrounded by attorneys. Why? Why do title reps build relationships with real estate agents? Why? Because real estate agents can build Like if you're a title rep and you have nothing but realtors, you can build your business. If you're an insurance agent and you have nothing but realtors, you can build a great business. If you're a carpet company and you have nothing but realtors, you can build a great business. If you are I think I said insurance rep, you can build a great business. So the way that I would approach this for attorneys is be a title rep. What do title reps do? Title reps sponsor realtor events. Oh my God. Title reps do pop buys in offices and bring like little candy baskets or like little, guess what we're doing this year? And we're going back to what we did years back. We're dropping off pumpkin pies to a bunch of attorneys like we did 5-6 years ago. Why? I want to rebuild some of those connections, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's just smart, dude. So, and what I'm aware of is that, again, either one will work. If you want it to be like a main source of your business, do both. One is a long game. It'll take you a while to formulate those relationships. I remember we talked about it and you're like, yeah, it wasn't like a year of dropping off cookies at all the offices and doing all that stuff before you got like a deal. But then it became like an awesome source. So it takes a while to do that, but it works. The thing with going directly to consumers is it works immediately. Like you'll start taking listings immediately. So what I would propose or suggest, and it sounds like we're saying the same thing, is that if you wanted it to be like a complete kind of source of business, do both.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, but sometimes going direct to the consumer will put you in cases where they're like, oh, you know what? Actually, I was just told last week to provide a list of 3 real estate agents. Send me your contact information. I'll provide the 3 real estate agents. Now, that's a case where there's attorneys involved. Now, that actually allows the attorneys to see your name. Now, if you do a good job, those attorneys might be like, oh, that was actually a really good transaction. Let me use this real estate agent again, which allows you to build those relationships with those attorneys in some cases.
Yeah. And another technique you can use, I did it in another niche, but it would work here as well, is like, let's say you go directly to the consumer. They have a family law attorney, divorce attorney. You end up earning the business because let's say you go directly to them, they're in agreement, they both hire you, it's fine. You do a really good job. I would introduce myself to both attorneys during the transaction. Hey, Jose, Aaron Novello here. I just want to give you a quick shout. I'm helping the, Morales family go through sell the real property. And I just want to reach out to you because, I know you have a solid reputation and, as professionals, we can work together as a team to make this as smooth and easy as possible for you. So if there's anything you need from me that you need to present to court or anything like that, just let me know. And they're like, okay, great. And then would you like it where I can have my assistant send you updates as the transaction progresses? Would that be helpful to you? They're like, yeah, that's dope. Okay, what's the best email for me to send it to? Da-da-da. Okay, awesome. Well, again, I appreciate your time and look forward to working with you. Then I would send them a little bomb video after I talk to them. Hey, sup, Jose? Just want to put a face to the name, right? Then when it closes, I would reach out to him, say thanks. It was a pleasure working with you. It was a pleasure doing business with you. And what I did, just so you know, is I went on your Google My Business page and I left a 5-star review for you guys because you guys were awesome to deal with. And I'm curious because, as you know, I know you do a lot of these transactions. Oftentimes attorneys will have like a preferred vendor list where if, families can't come to an agreement or they're looking to you to suggest, an agent, I'd love to have the opportunity to be on that list. Is that something you'd be open to? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess so. All right, well, would it be all right if we met in person and put a face to the name and maybe I could buy you a coffee or something? Yeah, that's cool. That's how you do that. And then it's like a slow, you end up with a stable of like 3 or 4 because the idea is you want to think about like an attorney. So when you were saying that about title companies, agents are their salespeople.
Yeah, same thing. Attorneys are your salespeople.
That's right. Attorneys are your salespeople. So if you don't need like 100 of them, you need like 3 or 4 attorneys because those 3 or 4 might each refer you. So boom, that's like 16 deals. And at your average commission is like a couple $100,000. You know what I mean? Like just like that.
Yeah. Not only that, there's nothing better than getting a referral from an attorney because in order for attorneys to refer you, that means that they feel extremely comfortable with you. And that means that you've earned their trust, which means that the clients, when they get that referral, they're going to rely on that very heavily. So if they're considering 3 agents and one of them their attorney recommended, more than likely they're going to work with the agent that their attorney recommended because they trust their attorney and they're imagining that if their attorney's recommending that person, that person must be doing something right. Here's another gold nugget for you guys. So in some cases, you're going to run into situations where one of the parties wants to buy the other person out. There are lenders that specializes in divorce because the buyout process is different on a or the refinance process can be different on a divorce. So if you partner up with a lender that specializes in divorce cases and has a specialty, then if you hear of somebody wanting to buy out the other party or an attorney, you can recommend them to your preferred lender, which will increase the chances of the loan process being done the right way. Why? Here's why the buyout process can be different. So sometimes a judge will issue an order on a divorce, and in order to refinance, they use the child support income to help in the refinance. Now, in the refinance, if they say, oh, the child support ends in the next 6 months in the court order, the lender may not be able to rely on that income to basically to help them in the refinance process. So if you have a lender that understands that, they may be able to advise the attorneys on how to craft an order correctly to be able to increase the chances of the person being able to qualify for the refinance. Now, do you make money on the refinance? No, you don't. But if you come from a place of contribution of wanting to help people accomplish whatever it is that they want to accomplish, that is the way to build a sustainable real estate business, because people know that they can come to you with any problem and you're going to guide them in the right direction, regardless if it benefits you or not. So by doing that, now that person was able to keep their property, whatever. 5 years from now, they may be like, Jose, look, thank you so much for what you did. Like, thank you for staying in touch with me over the years. I want to work with you. So that is a nugget where you can do events with the attorneys, and you could have your lender partner do those events with you as well too. And both of you guys can actually go after this niche together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I already hear people kind of asking, and like I imagine them like shouting at us. They're like, all right, this is cool. This is dope. I appreciate this making sense to me. Here's where I can get, here I have to A, make a decision that I need a niche, B, understand that learning is really about learning about the thing so I can learn to do the thing and then actually do the thing. So like watching this and not doing the thing means I haven't learned anything. Yep. I need the specialized knowledge of what to say to these people. What I also need, which is critical, is where to get the data. So what would be your suggestions or recommendations on where to get the data, the information?
So it's public data, just like the probate. I don't have like an actual source, like all the leads for probate or PropStream or Rebo Gateway. What I would do when I would do it is I would just go on the public records, look at the calendar for all the new divorce cases that are filed, basically hired a virtual assistant to help me with this. I basically would look up the names, look up the tax records, to see if they owned any real property. If they owned any real property, I would basically look up the phone numbers and then add those to our dialing system, basically. So it was in very old school process, but in every county, the divorce process is public records. And then I would actually not, it wasn't like an expired where you have to call them the same day that they file for the divorce. It actually looks kind of weird if you do that. I would probably call them a month after they file for divorce. Yes. Could you miss a couple of people? Yes. But if you do it the day that they file for the divorce or the next day, it's going to look too much like, hey, look, like there's some sort of red flag or too much of a coincidence. If you wait like 30, 45 days, 60 days before you reach out to them, it won't look like, hey, look, you're aware of the process. And it'll actually allow you to run the hot market script. Now, when you're running the hot market script or whatever script you're running into them, if they don't open up to you, don't push it, guys. If they open up to you, great. If they don't, hey, move on to the next one. Luckily, there's a lot more in our market. There's a lot more people getting divorced than a lot more people dying, meaning it's actually a bigger
source than
probate, basically, because there's so many more people getting divorced than people dying in our market. Now, in Aaron's market, and this is what's interesting, because when Aaron and I started working together, and it's like, jump into probates, but in his market, there's probably thousands of probates a month. In our market, we're lucky if we get like 100 probates in a month, maybe.
Hey, we're lucky if 100 people die in a month. You know what I mean?
So in our area, what I had to do, and this is good. I just had to rely on a lot of different sources and become very versatile where I understand divorces, I understand probates, I understand unlawful detainers, I understand partition actions, I understand just all these different things to be able to come up with lead sources that would amount to what Aaron was able to do, just one big source that just had like 1,000 people,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, because we have the largest elderly population in the country. Now, what's interesting though is that we both have like this, we're both not attorneys. Okay? I want to be clear. We don't practice law. We both do have a very good working knowledge of it though. And as it pertains to transacting real property. So there would be times that I would get on calls with attorneys and have to be like, hey, you're the attorney. I'll defer to your judgment. Here's a process that we've used multiple times in the past. And I would just explain procedurally from a legal perspective. And then I'd be like, they're like, oh yeah, like let me look into it and I'll get back to you. And they call me back like, yeah, we could do that. I'm like, okay, great. So I don't make them feel silly about not knowing, but I would know and I could share it with them. And the same thing like you were saying, where like, because you understand, you sat in courtrooms or whatever, you understood procedurally how stuff works. Now, the moment that you ask about the decree, the moment that you ask about when you filed, the moment that you ask about what the decree says, instantaneously, people immediately recognize that you know what you're doing. So I think what's fascinating to me, Jose, is people have a tendency to like think that they need to tell people how awesome they are, when truthfully, the way that you can demonstrate that you really know what you're doing is by asking very detailed surgical questions specifically to what it is they're attempting to do. And immediately they will feel as though you like that you're a professional and you know what you're doing, because the quality of the questions that you ask are reflective of the fact that you understand the process very well.
Yeah. Yeah. Another tip that I like to do in divorces is whenever I have a combative situation, I like to keep things in writing. So instead of sometimes talking to them on the phone, I'll write things or I'll communicate via email instead, just so that I have the written proof of everything that we've talked about as well too. I like to do that as well too, where somebody is combative. I had a guy show up to my office saying, "Hey, what are you going to do to market my property?" What I told him is, and he was the non-cooperative spouse. I told him, "Look, whatever questions you have, send them to me in writing, and I'm happy to answer them in writing. And I'll reply back in writing."
That's a super solid pro tip, because again, remember that this is an emotional landmine.
Yeah.
There's super like high red alert on trust.
Yeah.
So, and you can just articulate that like, hey, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. My experiences in these dynamics. What's best is if you just put those questions in writing and I'll answer them and I'll copy all parties so everybody knows. So it's like 100% transparency. Here's what's going on.
Yeah.
And that allows them to trust you. They may not trust the other person, but they trust you, which is really what we're after, right?
Yeah. And a lot of them, what you'll notice is that the uncooperative party wants to take control of the situation. And by you asking for certain things in writing, sometimes it does not allow them to take control of the situation because everything is being documented. And a lot of times they want to steer you in a certain direction. And having everything in writing doesn't allow them to do that, which allows you to move the process forward and allows you to be the professional, allows you to be the expert. It allows you to do your job as well too, that you need to do, which your job is ultimately to sell the property.
Sell the real property. Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's like, it's an illustration of professionalism.
Now, here's a couple of other things. Now, here's a couple other situations that happen in divorce sometimes. Like whenever I take a divorce listing, I'll ask a question to the party. There's something called an in-spouse and an out-spouse. An in-spouse is a situation where one party lives at the property and the other party does not live at the property. In some cases, both people were living at the property and just living in separate rooms, which is kind of like insane because there's a lot of hostility in those types of situations. But like, if there's an out spouse, somebody that doesn't live in the property, I'll ask them, be like, hey, look, as soon as I take the listing, I'll be like, hey, is there any personal property that you need me to coordinate for you to get out of the home? Yes, there is. Because sometimes what ends up happening in these situations is somebody gets mad at the other person, kicks them out of the house, puts a restraining order on them, and that person moved out in the middle of the night and left all their clothes there, left everything there. And since they've been going through the divorce process, they don't have access to the property as well too. So that's going to be something that you need to coordinate them at some point to get access. And sometimes the person that lives in the property is going to be like, well, I don't want that person to walk the property by themselves. I don't trust them. I need you or somebody else to accompany them while they're walking through my property. So there's so many like different complexities. So that's one of the notes that I wrote down. If there's personal property, at some point you're going to need to coordinate that. If there's restraining orders as well too, you're going to need to
Navigate how that works. Yeah.
In some cases, there's sabotage as well too, where one person will do deferred maintenance on purpose on the property to get back at the other person for whatever reason. So they'll basically, like I've seen cases where they take out the flooring of the house to make it unfinanceable just to get back at the other person, you know? Wow. So, and then in some cases, there's a conflict between your fiduciary duty as a real estate agent and what the court wants you to do as well too. So in some cases, there's times where you have to communicate to the attorneys that one party is not being uncooperative, and that can be a conflict with your fiduciary duties as a real estate agent to do what your client tells you to do. So there's a little bit of conflict there where there's a balance that you have to do with doing whatever the court wants you to do and also abiding by all of your fiduciary duties as a real estate agent.
Yeah. So what's coming up for me as this conversation's coming to a close is that the additional piece around emotional intelligence is conflict resolution. Yeah. And what I'm aware of is that the best source I know that taught me how to constructively work through conflict is a book. It gives you a particular mental map. It's called the Masterclass in Gremlin Taming. It gives you a framework with which to communicate. And there's about 5 to 8 pages in there that's on how to constructively work through conflict. And it should be like required reading for every human on the planet, because just being a human, there's going to be conflict. You know what I mean? Yeah. But nobody ever sits down and teaches us how to work through it. So a lot of the things that we're talking about here, part of the value that you bring to the dynamic is not just your specialized knowledge, not just your ability to understand the process, not just what to say and how to say it. It's also your ability to constructively help them to work through conflict. I remember you were telling me, it was a different situation, but it's the same thing, where there were 2 people and they were just like fighting, and you shut the door and you're like, hey guys, we're really close here. And my intention in shutting the door is, like, we're going to sit in this room, we're going to figure this out. And then you constructively help them to work through the conflict, which was really just emotional. That's all it is. That was like the real hurdle. And then once you help people get over the real hurdle, they came to a meeting of the minds and the deal closed. So like, that's a lot of it as well, is like when people are if you see somebody who is like, they're like intelligent, they don't have something wrong with them that's causing not to be able to function properly from a mental perspective, and they're behaving in a way that's not rational, it's completely emotional.
Yeah.
So helping somebody, I remember we had one that it was a divorce and she moved out and he still lived there, and she was being like difficult. And I remember I had to get on a call with her. I'm like, look, what I'm aware of is my intention isn't to pick sides here at all. I'm sure, there's his story, her story, and the truth. You're entitled to feel the way that you do. I'm just here to help you guys facilitate. So what I'd like to do is just ask you a couple of questions so that way you can decide what you feel is best. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. She's like, okay. I'm like, is it an option for you to buy the property back? She's like, no. I'm like, is it an option for you to maybe like buy it back and rent it out? No. Okay. And each and every month that goes by, because what's happened is they took out a type of, they had a type of finance, like they weren't making the payments. So each and every month that goes by, what I'm aware of, Mrs. Smith, is that the amount that's owed is going down. Excuse me, it's going up. So the equity is going down. So how much you're going to receive is going down. So while I'm aware there may be a lot of animosity between the two of you, I know that ultimately it's a business decision. So walk me through this. How is it helpful for you personally to elongate the sale? When we do so, it means you're just going to get less money. And in a non-emotional like way. And she's like, yeah, I get it. I'm just like really mad. I said, yeah, I understand. And my grandpa taught me something when I was young. He said, you got to be careful about getting mad because it can cost you money. And I'm just here to help you guys facilitate. So we have a couple options. One is you can continue to keep going down the path that you're going down, and it'll elongate it. And in the end, it'll mean you guys will get less, and specifically you will get less. Or number two, we can set that aside momentarily, which I know is difficult. I'm not suggesting it's easy. At the same time, we can set it aside, come to a meeting of the minds to ensure that you get the most amount you possibly can. Either one's okay. Based on what you're looking to accomplish or why, what do you think we should do? And she's like, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about it and da-da-da. Like, all right, what do we need to do? You know what I mean? But like, and that's a lot of like, I don't think what agents realize is that's like a lot of the value is helping people to constructively work through the conflict.
Not only that, but in some cases, that person, even after a conversation like that, they may not do what needs to happen to move the process forward. Right. In that type of cases, you may need to reach out to the attorneys.
What I was just about to say, Jose, what I would do there in that instance, if that's the case, and I know that there's attorneys there, so I'm like, hey, so you have a choice here. Whatever you decide is fine. One is you can persist down the current path you're taking. Now, I need you to understand, and this isn't a threat. It's not. I'm just giving you an accurate assessment of reality. What the next step will be is I'll have to reach out to the attorney. And then more likely than not, this is what's going to happen. Number two, the second option is this. And here's how that would work out. Either one's okay. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. What do you think we should do? So like letting them know what the repercussions of their actions are in a very polite, professional way, not accusational, not like aggressive, but like, hey, I'm just sharing this with you so you're clear. What the potential next step would be.
In addition, like let's say that you go to the attorney, right? And the attorney still can't convince their client to basically sign off. Like I had a situation where we had 3 offers on a property and one of the parties was like, no, like I want this. We had it listed at a certain price. They wanted to counter back above the price that we had it listed for, had to get the attorneys involved. And he was 1 day away from going back to court. And the petition that the other attorney was going to ask for was for them to take away his rights as a signer.
Wow.
And if they took away his rights, they were going to have a court clerk sign on his behalf. And he ended up signing because he didn't want his powers to be eliminated as well, too. So the court actually has the right, if somebody's not being cooperative, and here's what's you can communicate that to the client. Yes. And be like, look, this is what I've seen happen in these situations. If you continue this, I've seen it where they actually take away your right to be a signer on the property. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Yeah, and this is so good because I would do the same thing on probate, where like people would be under the false misperception that because like your brother and sister, and let's say you're not agreeing on what to do with the property, one wants to sell, the other one doesn't, that because one doesn't means that the property's not going to be sold. That's not true. People would operate under that assumption. They're like, oh, you can't do anything without me. It's like, there's something called a partition. They will sue you. It's un-American if somebody wants to sell something that somebody else doesn't let them. So they will sue you and they will win. So I would have that conversation. And I'm like, well, what I'm aware of is, and my intention sharing this with you is not to be aggressive. It's not to give you an ultimatum. Instead, it's just so you have truth. You have an accurate assessment of reality and you can make decisions accordingly. Some people operate, I'm not suggesting this is true for you. They operate from a position of, because I'm a sibling, you can't do anything without me. Now, I need you to understand, we've helped a lot of families, so we're familiar with the legal aspect of this. That's actually not accurate. What's accurate is that if your sibling decides to sue you because you won't cooperate, they will win. It'll probably take 6 to 8 months, but they'll win. And then what you'll have to do as the party is you'll have to pay for their legal fees. They'll take it out of your proceeds from the sale of the property. Did you know that? And they're like, no, I had no idea that was the case. Okay. So again, my intention is sharing that with you just so you're clear. So now that that's the case, now that you're aware of that, you have a couple options. Whatever you decide is fine. One option is you continue to go down the path that you're going down. And with a high degree of probability, it'll result in what I just shared with you, right? Because I've already spoken to your sibling and they're aware of that, and that's the path that they will take. The second option is we come to a meeting of the minds. They're willing to, use a little honey, maybe give you a little bit more of the proceeds in order to facilitate the transaction, help you get to the next step. Either one's okay. Based on what we're looking to accomplish, what do you think we should do? And what you're doing is the same thing there. Like, hey, what I'm aware of is, I'm feeling the resistance from you, and that's okay. It's your prerogative. My intention in sharing with you what I'm about to share with you is not to engender fear in any way, but it's just so that you're clear. I have seen the court, when someone is not being cooperative, they will strip that individual of their rights. They will assign a clerk to actually sign on their behalf. Did you know that they can do that? No,
Did not know.
I did not know that. So I just want you to be clear. So now that you're clear and you have that information, how about you take, I don't know, like an hour or a couple hours to think about it. I will call you back and we'll revisit this. Sound good? And they're like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, but that's what, as an agent, if I'm going to go down this path of a niche, I have to be committed to the niche. I can't just be like, yo, I heard Uncle Bob died. You want to sell your house? Hey, I heard you're getting like divorced. I want to sell your house. Like, no, you have to
learn the rules of the game.
You got to learn the rules of the game, bro.
And the language.
Learn the rules, learn the language, learn the emotional intelligence, learn conflict resolution. You have to learn all of these things. And remember, because I want everybody to be clear, we have all walked around with in our brains with a lie where we were taught that learning was accumulating information. That is not learning. Learning is learning about the thing, so that way you can do the thing, so you can learn how to do the thing, and then you actually do the thing. So if you are learning about something and you're not doing it, you haven't actually learned it. So we appreciate you guys, Elite Builders, Coast to Coast. Look forward to reconnecting soon.